I'm Streetside Anthony, and you're watching the Kranky Canadian.
All right, what is going on, everybody out in YouTube world? You know what time it is. It's Monday night. I am the Kranky Canadian. I am highly caffeinated, and I have the smartest guest I've ever had on this show so far. As a matter of fact, this man is in my opinion, the smartest guy in comics. That my IQ has raised 20 points just by being on the same screen as him. Please, everybody, welcome Doug. Doug Bratton, say hello to YouTube universe, man.
Hey, everybody, and thanks, Roger, for having me on. My wife will never agree with anything you just said, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. Some of the things that you write about and you blog about, man, I never thought of that, and it's very well written. But we'll get into all that. So, welcome. I appreciate you coming on all the way from New Jersey, not that far from me. So, is it a balmy 95 where you are too?
It is hot. It is very hot.
It's not supposed to be this hot in June. I'm not ready for it yet, Thank God for central air.
Well, in May, it was like 60 degrees the entire month, and it's now 90. So,
all right. We have about 12 people right now, so I'm going to say hello to the chat. We got Uncanny Swag. What's up, brother? X11 Bravo Comics. Hey, Doug Bratton's in the house. Wesley's Comics, brother from Canada. We have Anachronic Comics. Excuse me. Sith Lordly in the house. What's up, my brother from the West Coast? I'm sorry, Sith. My daughter apparently was too cool to go to a comic book to meet up with you. My daughter's on vacation in LA, and I tried to talk her into going to Comics, Tunes, and Toys and meeting up with these guys and taking a picture. Yeah, I'll do that. And she's coming home tomorrow, and no appearance at Comics, Tunes, and Toys. Alex Garcia, the illustrator. If you guys ain't following him, he's the man behind these logos. I would say he's the logo guy to the stars because he's starting to do everybody's. Wookie Fodder is in the house. Jay Salsa, what's up, brother? We have Jeff, and I think I'm caught up. As people straggle in, as usual. If I miss you, just keep chatting it up, and I'll point out if you have questions for Doug or myself, just type it in the chat. We will answer them if we can. If you look in the description of this video, you will see a link to Doug's Instagram. You see a link to Doug's latest blog on Reggie Collect's website. From there, you can access all his blogs. And you'll also see a link to Partners in Prevention. It's a not-for-profit company that Doug works for that we'll talk about a little bit. You got all those links, so you don't even have to go search for that stuff. So Action Figure Comedy, that's your brother, right?
That's my brother.
I would call him the brother, but the brother's taken for my brother. So the other brother, I don't know.
He's already thrown out the question. What can you tell us about your amazing brother? There you go.
Is that for me? Because I've got...
Yeah, there you go. It's definitely for you.
I've got 4 of them, so... That's funny. All right, so why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, like personally, as much as you want to share as far as where you live, your government name, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I'm not very protected on YouTube or Instagram. My name is actually Doug Bratton. I live in New Jersey, north central New Jersey in Morris County. A good reference point for those in the area, it's right off Route 80, about 35 minutes west.
Yeah, what exit?
Manhattan.
Yeah, it's like the old Saturday Night Live skit. You're in Jersey, I'm in Jersey. What exit?
Yeah, there you go. That's where I live. That's who I am as far as my real name goes.
Yeah.
And well, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about stuff I do for Reggie Collects and
absolutely.
Stuff later. So I don't want to step on any questions.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I had a couple weeks ago, I had DJ Radius on, and Dark Side Jedi on, and he basically answered my first 3 questions in his description of himself, or first 5 questions. I'm like, all right, well, we scrapped those questions.
I saw that.
So all right, that's great. So one thing I didn't realize until I was really going through some of your stuff was you're a cartoonist. Or is that wrong?
Yeah, no, that's actually when you asked me what's one thing that people might not know about me, that was one of the things that I thought of is I was a syndicated newspaper cartoonist and also a magazine cartoonist. I did work for Mad Magazine and Nickelodeon Magazine. I did that for quite some time. So I was in the industry, just a very different part than probably, most of the people that are fans of your show are into a different kind of comics. I did a humor comic.
Gotcha, like the funnies in the papers and stuff.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Because I saw you. Well, you first of all, you had posted at one point a birthday card from one of the illustrators from Mad Magazine. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. You as a caricature, Yep,
that was Al Jaffe, who turned 100 years old a few months ago. Wow. What a lot of people might not know about Mad Magazine is the back inside folding cover, if you're familiar with it. All of those have been done by one cartoonist for 60 years, Al Jaffe.
No kidding.
He's an unbelievable guy. He's had an unbelievable life. There's a biography written about him called The Mad Life of Al Jaffe, but just an incredibly great human being and artist. And I've been fortunate enough, there's a professional society of cartoonists called the National Cartoonist Society. And I'm a member of it and was the New York chapter chair for about 4 years and got to know Al very well and many other amazing, talented cartoonists through that.
Yeah, that was a pretty neat character and wow, 100 years old. That's it's a full life right there, man. That's a full life. Yeah, I was like reading those, and you had another one. Was another artist that was at your tag sale. I'm like, man, Doug's hooked. He knows people, man. How do we get these people at the swap doing caricatures or drawings at one of our tables?
Oh, that would be fun.
So you're a family guy like me. You have a son that plays baseball in high school, right? I know. My son, quarterback of football. He plays lacrosse as a sophomore, along with a couple of his friends. Was fortunate enough to be able to play varsity this year. Basketball, he missed last season because of coaching. But I know that I absolutely look forward to every time that kid steps on the court or the field or whatever and watch him play. It's like, like I'm floating, I would imagine. Same for you?
It really is. It's like one of my absolute favorite things is watching him play baseball. I'm a baseball lover. I love the game. And I've been able to, and fortunate enough to volunteer and coach my son for many years from Little League up through Babe Ruth. But he plays for Morris Knowles High School. He's a sophomore. He's a pitcher and second baseman. He played JV this year, and he ended the season by starting and completing a mercy rule shutout against our arch rivals, Morris. Nice. So that was a fun way to end the season. And the grandparents were up visiting, and it was their first time seeing him since the start of the pandemic, so a year and a half.
Yeah, I saw you had posted where he got his first win, and so he's a sophomore. So he's the same age as my son.
Yep.
Excuse me, and Otto's son, who like our boys are like best friends, and
cool.
Been playing football together since they were 6 years old. It's how Everett and I met. Really, is at the Pop Warner football field. And so I didn't realize that your son was the same age. I thought he was a little older. That's pretty cool. So you just had a tag sale, and I was gonna try and make it, and then something came up. But then the following weekend we had an event, and you couldn't make it either. So how did the tag sale go? Was you and your brother? Or I think I saw a sign and you said the Bratton Brothers, or
yeah. We started a few years ago, just kind of doing a collectibles yard sale. When I was a kid, I collected baseball cards, and my brother and I both collected comics. He still collects action figures. So we just started doing that a few years ago. And obviously things have blown up a little bit this past year. So it's a different animal for sure. So and the weekend that my parents came out was the weekend of the swap, which was a killer for us because the first time we'd seen him in a year and a half, so we couldn't go. But
should have brought him.
Well,
should have brought him. We had a DJ. They could have been dancing while we.
Now the prior swap that you had planned, that unfortunately things really started to blow up and it had to get shut down. That we had blocked off, and I convinced my brother Dave, who's in here, to take the 2.5 hour or whatever ride up to go to it. But unfortunately, that was postponed. But we will definitely, as soon as you have the September date, I will get it on my calendar. I've been itching to go since that swap was canceled. So
yeah, the swap or even the crawls. I mean, those are just as fun if you talk to anybody who goes there. You know, it's a little more traveling because you have to go to the different stores to get the great deals. But,
yeah. Oh no, that looks fun too.
If anybody's within a couple hours driving when we have one of our events, I highly recommend you check one out. So you plan on being on the next one?
Absolutely.
I'm going to hold you to that. You know, of course, unless something family comes up. Those are the only excuses we take. Those are the only excuses we take. If it's something to do with your family, okay, you're good. You know.
Once I pick a date on my calendar, I'm good. So,
so let's get a little bit into. So first time I interacted with you was in the chat. You know, you came in watching our show, seeing you in the chat of other show, and then I saw you pop in on Reggie's show. You know, he brings on. Even he knows. You know, if you bring people on that are smarter than you, your show is better. You know, Otto always says. You know, that's why I hang out with people that are smarter than me. So that, you know, you learn stuff, right? I mean, we all learn from each other. But your first Instagram post was only like a year ago, you know? So is that your first Instagram page? I mean, what made you say, you know, I'm going to start sharing comics and start an Instagram page?
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is I was not on Instagram at all. And I was doing a signing at New York Comic Con with other cartoonists through the National Cartoonist Society. And I was made fun of repeatedly at the signing because Al Jaffe, who at the time was 99, had an Instagram page and I didn't. You know, at the time I was like 47. So, you know, I kind of put it off. And then when things went into lockdown and I was at home more and not commuting, I'm like, okay, I'll get on it. And it just seemed like a fun way to connect with other people who loved comics. And
yeah,
I'll say one of the fun things about being a cartoonist and working in the field is everybody is a fan. Every editor, every writer, every artist, every salesperson.
Right.
You don't do it because you have to. You do it because you just love comics. So, and that's how that's why I kind of jumped in on Instagram and honestly started watching YouTube channels because my morning commute was gone. So my dog Bentley gets me up at 6 a.m. every morning to let him out, and I had nowhere to go. So for an hour, I'd go on YouTube and start watching shows about comics, and I got
you got to retrain the dog to sleep for another hour and a half to 2 hours.
That ain't happening, Roger.
So when you watching YouTube, who were the first channels that you started watching that really got you to realize, you know, there's some great content here? And like, who did you start watching on YouTube?
You know, it's funny. The first one, I was trying to piece this together in my mind. The first thing I watched wasn't collecting specific. It was, I went online and found videos of Joe Kubert drawing.
Okay.
And that's because the Kubert School, which is a comic and cartoon art school, is in the next town over from me. And when I was a kid, I would take Saturday classes at the school in like early 1980s, and Joe Kubert taught the classes. And I had no clue who he was, but he taught these Saturday classes. So I've always loved him and his work. So I was surfing around looking for that. And then I came across some guy, I'm not even sure his name, who would just ran a secondhand shop and I think in like Brooklyn or something, and would just post these like 30-minute videos of showing off comics. And I'd been out of collecting literally since middle school, Roger. I hadn't bought a comic, basically. And as I started looking around for different content, I came across many, many YouTube channels, but the one that really kind of sucked me in early was Reggie's channel. And that was because he had a lot of how-to videos.
Yeah.
And I was totally, I hadn't really done the comic book collecting thing since I was a kid. And all of a sudden I see this video on cleaning and pressing comics. And I was like, oh my gosh, I called my brother up because probably about 8 years ago when I was doing a signing at New York Comic Con, I convinced him to bring some comic books that we had when we were kids and take him to CGC. And he had an ASM 300, came back a 9.6, and I call him up. I'm like, Dave, you're supposed to get these things cleaned and pressed. I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, that's for sure. You leave a lot of money on the table if you don't have them clean and pressed.
Yep. So that's how I got kind of started. But I mean, if I went down the list of channels that I watch, like yours, Reggie's, Barry Gary's, Comic Tom's, Double A Comics, Aaron Baldwin, yep. Matt Woods, Anachrondic, Joe, who's in the chat, Climbing Comics, Lords of the Long Box, Erod, who does my pressing and submitting for me, which is awesome. No Good Comics, Spine Ticks, Pressable Deffects. I mean, I could go on all day. I really do enjoy the entire YouTube community and watch it a lot.
Yeah, especially since really we all kind of do different stuff.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. Like the Erod, when he had that part, how much did he make off of books, and he tells you what he pays for them, what he's, that's really cool. That's really cool information. Like people don't realize it's not that hard if you do a little research. And we'll get into that a little later with some of the blogs that you had. So then you get on with Reggie. You go on live with Reggie. And you do a great weekly blog. It's weekly, right? Blog on. So tell me how that happened. How did that come out? How did you connect with Reggie? And how did you go from being a sub to a content contributor on his channel?
It's funny. I started watching his channel and started entering the giveaway. So true story. And I'll be honest, I don't know if Reggie remembers this or knows this. So at some point I'll have to direct him to watch this. So I go to enter his contest for the first time and I totally screwed it up. You're supposed to click on a link in the post in the community tab. And instead of clicking on the link, I put it in the comments. So okay. I'm literally out hunting comics with my brother, and I get a DM on Instagram from Reggie, like, dude, never put the phrase in the chat. And he was really, really nice. He was also like, because I put like my name, my address, like all the personal information, like also, ouch. You might not want to do that either. So he was very gracious. I apologize. He's like, look, it happens a lot. He sent me a link to a video on it. And after that, I think it was probably a couple of weeks later, he mentioned that he had a blog on his website and was looking for, people who were interested in writing, who might be wanted, contribute.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, from watching his channel and Three Men in the Basement and other channels, it really got me thinking a lot differently about collecting. And I, for like no reason other than I love to write, and I write, some things for professional reasons and some things just because I'm interested in it for myself.
Right.
I had written this almost like a little mini essay about why I think that the current eras of comics are incorrect and need to be changed. So I just randomly written this thing.
So that was the first thing you sent to him?
Yeah. So I said, hey, look, I have no idea what you're looking for. Mine's a little bit longer, I think, than they usually are. And I split it into 2 parts and I sent it to him. And he wrote me back right away. He was like, I think this is really interesting stuff. And do you have any more? And we got to know each other then through just chatting, you know, through Instagram about comics and about blog topics. And, you know, at some point I was like, hey, I'm home. I like to write. I'm sitting around in the mornings. And I just kind of at some point said, hey, Reggie, I'm going to, you know, you seem to like the stuff. I'm going to make it a goal that this year I'm going to do 1 post a week for the year and contribute because I really appreciate your channel. So
nice. And, you know, he's a smart guy as well. And didn't take much to read one of your blogs to know that, you know, this is not only great content, but it's a very educated outlook on different perspectives in the comic book collecting community or the comic book industry, I should say. You ever think of starting your own YouTube channel about, you know, the video version of your blogs in some sort?
No. My life's pretty busy. When, you know, when I get to retirement, I'd be interested in doing it. I'll be really honest. There's so many wonderful people in the community and doing great stuff like Reggie that I am just very appreciative to be invited on a show like yours and like Reggie's. And I'm happy to contribute just because I like giving back to the community. So,
well, I appreciate you being on. I know Reggie probably appreciates what you do for him. Like I said, when he brings you on for certain topics, I mean, I don't know how much advance notice you have with some of the questions he asks you, but you know, you definitely have an opinion on it, and it's not just screw them, you know. It's got some substance to it, you know.
Oh, thank you. Well, the first, I think, time or two, Reggie kind of prepped me a bit and said, hey, you know, because we'd never done that. We DM'd, you know, and he'd read my stuff and, you know, but we never, like when you and I got on right before the show, it was, I've seen you forever, but it's the first time we chatted. So he kind of prepped me a little. And I think after that first time or two, it became more, hey, I had this interesting topic, you know, are you interested in that? Like, do you know, or is it something that you'd want to chat about? And I would say, yeah, that's great. And because I'd have the topic, you know, a day or two in advance, I actually do prepare, you know, I write notes. I wrote notes for our interview. That's just how I, you know, I like to think things.
You want to be prepared. Sure. Absolutely. I always tell people that, you know, behind the scenes, if you would see the amount of papers with notes I have taped to my TV screen, my monitor, you know, so I can quickly reference things.
It's fun, but it's work, and it's a lot of prep.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't want to, you know, I don't want to like babble, you know. I want to have things that I want to ask you and make sure that I, you know, touch on the stuff that, you know, are specific to you before I get into the, you know, hey, who's your favorite DC character and those kind of things that people do want to know. But it's slower on that scale, especially with someone like you of what questions I want to ask. So, you're a big Sandman fan, huh? I love the so you had a blog about, and you talked about Sandman, and you called them the Big Four. Yeah, you know, and you had what other book has 5 first appearances in it with that Sandman number 10, you know, and like I never would have known that. Like, who the hell would have known that? And to be honest with you, until I read that, I didn't even realize that there was a live action coming, or maybe I don't know if it's animated or what it is, but
live action. Yeah, it's it was funny because I hadn't collected. Once I got back into watching the content, you know, we couldn't do much because everything was shut down. So I was like, well, I'm kind of bored. I had finished reading the entire series in trades, and I absolutely loved it. If you haven't read it, it truly is like a masterwork in comics. And I just decided, well, I can't go anywhere on vacation, so I'm going to start hitting up local LCSs with my brother and see if I complete a run of it. And that's what really got me back into collecting, was saying, okay, I'm going to try and put the Sandman run together. And then it, you know, obviously blew up.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, so the fact that you pointed out that if anybody hadn't read it, the big books, the big four for Sandman are 1, 4, 8, and 10. They have the most first appearances, and whether, and you had pointed out, whether or not they're going to blow up, I guess depends on, because they're not all going to show up in season 1, right? So if it gets canceled after season 1, you know, some of them won't show up. But, you know, if the writing's anything like you described in the books, it's probably one of those cult type, I mean, I don't want to call it cult, but, you know, one of those indie kind of stories where people really gravitate to, even though they didn't read the comics. You know, based on your blog, I'm going to go read it.
Oh, it's incredible. Well, and issues number 1, 4, and 8 for a while have been like the big three. Because number 1's the first appearance of, you know, a lot of people, including Dream, Morpheus, who's like the main character. And then 4 is the first appearance of Lucifer, who the television series Lucifer is based on. So that
really?
Yeah. And then issue number 8 is the first appearance of Death, who's like a beloved, like there's all these 7 like Dream, I can't name them all off the top of my head, but like Dream, Death,
what the hell,
Desire, you know, and all the Death, all these D7 endless. And so 8 was the first appearance of Death, but then there was this book number 10 sitting out there that, like, you know, I think it was in Key Collector, but it wasn't, nobody was going after it. And it has like really important first appearances. The bad guy in season 1, the Corinthian, who is an incredibly cool, creepy, you know, he's going to be a great character. It's his first appearance. It's like Despair and Desire, 2 of Dream's siblings' first appearance. It's all these really key characters, and it was sitting there, and I'm like, this should be one of those books. And so far for season number 1, 5 cast characters have their first appearance in that one issue, which is wild.
Like, how many other books have that and don't blow up, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Wesley, his mom was so surprised when he told her Lucifer was based on comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So I just want to touch over a couple of the blogs that I really enjoyed. Okay, so the first one is the print run and sales data. Oh. Like, how do you come up with this information? Like your outlook, like, and it just and you mentioned things that, I mean, I'm not saying it's you know, nobody knows it because I didn't know it. I mean, it's not stuff that I looked into, but like, say the print run data, you know, the fact that you don't know because you don't know how many they printed.
Yeah.
You know, and on top of that, you know, say, you know, not thinking about it, if the print run should be 5,000 and they print, you know, 6,000, just in case there are, you know, they have to replace them and there are problems. If they give 25% of those away, what do they do with the other 750 copies? Do they destroy them? Do they give them away to people? Nobody knows. So you can't. So that data really isn't useful because it's not accurate. Like, how do you don't know what you can't go by the print run because you don't know how many of them actually got sold. Then you had the sales data, and something else I didn't realize that only is specific to direct market, right? In North America, which, you know, like, who would think, why just North America? And the other thing is only in the month that the comic was released.
Yep.
So if the owner buys 100 of these and he sells 50 of them, and 3 months later something pops and he sells the other 50, those are not counted in the sales data. That's correct.
I think whatever is ordered by the LCS is probably counted. But say, for instance, a book is released in the last week of a month, you can reorder. So let's say you ordered a book and you ordered 50 copies for your LCS and it sold out really quickly. If they still have more, you can reorder. So now you reorder 100 copies in the next month. Those 100 copies aren't going to be in that original, like the count that you would find on Comicron.
I gotcha.
It didn't happen in that month. So it's
Comicron is a public website that you can get this information from.
Yeah, so Comicron's really cool resource. And just to give credit where credit's due, this whole topic came from Reggie and I chatting about it, because in a blog I'd written, I was talking about print run data, and he was like, oh, hey, just a heads up, it's actually sales data, not print run data. And then he and I started chatting about that and almost like kind of brainstorming about could you even find that information out? Right. So then I was like, oh, I'm writing a blog about this. But Comicron actually gives all of that information. Like, hey, when you can go up, and I think pretty much any book that was distributed from Diamond from like the late 80s or in the 90s on, you can go by the month and look up, and they will have sales data on it. But it does come with those asterisks. It's what was sold in the first month or distributed in the first month in North America. And you've kind of got to use
just a direct market. So anything that goes out to, the bookstores and that kind of stuff doesn't count towards that sales data, because that sales data is taken for what? They're taking that from Diamond. Is that where that information comes from?
So, and the reality is the level of retail or non-direct market books is probably pretty small at this stage of the game, but we just don't know exactly what that is. So you kind of gotta think a bit and kind of figure out what you think a print run might have been. But the reality is the Comicron sales data is, I think, solid enough that it gives you at least a sense comparatively of how scarce one comic might be compared to another, Right. So, which is really, really useful to collectors.
And then as the blog went on, is there a way to solve the problem without having accurate print run and sales data? And you had like standardized estimates, like you had formulas in there that I'm too stupid to understand. I'm like trying to follow the numbers, and you came up with like a little formula that gives you an estimate of, does it really matter if you think it's 60,000, the formula gives you 65,000. Does that 5,000 really affect? And with modern books or high print run books, it really doesn't, does it?
No. And that's the thing. It's any sort of statistical analysis, you're never going to get exact. When you survey people and you try and get population estimates of anything, it's not going to be exact, but it's going to be close enough that it's useful. And that's the same with this information. If you get in the ballpark, like if I know, I just wrote a blog post a couple weeks ago about a Game of Thrones first appearance book that I'm really big on. And,
House of Dragon?
Yeah, it will, in part because of that. It's the first appearance. I don't want to get too nerdy on everybody. If you're not Game of Thrones fans, it won't matter.
Is that the one with I always joke around, whatever. Is that the one with the zombies, or is that the dragons?
Yeah,
because I didn't watch any of those shows. Yeah. I didn't watch any of those shows. When he would start talking about it, I would just stop him by going, "Is that the one with the zombies or the dragons?" I don't know.
Well, the first appearance was an incredibly low, had very low sales data number, in part because it's a very niche book produced by Dynamite, and partially because it came out during the pandemic months when all the shops were closed down. So
Right.
I wrote a post about this. And again, you know, there's no way to know the exact numbers, but the reality is when like, you know, another first appearance has like the Blue Marble. I think that one, I did a chart and I'm going to totally blow it, but let's say it had like 12,000 or 15,000 copies distributed. Well, if this one had 2,500 distributed, that's like, you know, 1/5 of another book that's really
You talking about this?
Time.
You talking about this?
Yep.
So that was my next was going into that. You had that blog that was supply and demand.
Yeah.
With the speculation. I absolutely love this chart. Like, did you make this? This is effing genius, Doug. Like, and it's something I never thought about. Like, you got to take into consideration the print, you know, before you worry about the demand. And that, like you said, the quadrant 4 is where you have the most potential to make money on comics if that's what you're trying to do. Hope that you can get a book that's going to blow up, but that has low supply because then it's worth the most amount of money, right?
Yeah. And that, to give credit where credit's due, I did create this for supply and demand for comics, but quadrant things like this have been used by people before me. I just took the concept. Like when you like I'm doing a time management workshop for my staff in a few weeks, and Stephen Covey has 4 quadrants of like, you know, urgent, important, not urgent, not important. So the quadrant concept isn't unique, but I wanted to apply that to supply and demand because I think it's really important for collectors.
Yeah, this was awesome. It's very useful. I saw that. I'm like, I gotta share that with everybody tonight. And everybody that you're watching on the rewind, you're in the chat. This is all stuff that I picked from Doug's blogs that he does on a weekly basis. So when I say, you know, even though you thought I was joking, the smartest guy in comics, I mean, this stuff is written by somebody who has deep thought in the issues that he blogs about. It has to do with our comic industry, whether it's collecting, whether it's supply and demand, or whether it's speculation. All that stuff that you write about, it's not just, well, this is what I think. You use an educated opinion to draw a conclusion or to give you all your options like this. Like, here are all your options. And you give, you know, high supply plus high demand, high value. You know, it's relative because there's a lot of books, but everybody wants them, but there's a lot of books. You know, if you have a high supply with low demand, you're selling that book for $1 the following week. You know, low supply plus high demand, and that's, like you say, feeding frenzy. I mean, one of the excuse me, good examples of that was the Star Wars High Republic, you know, cover swipe of Clone Wars #1, where, you know, you couldn't even get on the website. I think crashed, people trying to buy this thing because they knew there was only going to be 500 copies sold, or whatever, it's 300 copies. So it was a feeding frenzy trying to get on there. And the same day, those things are online for $700, you know. And if you're lucky enough to get one, you either have one in your PC or you made a ton of money off of it. You know, and I know people, if I were able to get one, I would have had it in my PC. I would not have gotten rid of it because it's one of those books that, you know, Ahsoka, I'm a huge Ahsoka fan. And unfortunately, I was one of those people that I couldn't touch it because even though people around me had gotten them, they were putting them on eBay and making $600 off of them. But that goes to say for that little quadrant, you know, and it's not something I ever would have thought of on my own, you know. So anybody like, say, if you're watching this, if you're in the chat, if you're watching this on the rewind, in the description, you're going to see a link to one of the latest blog from Doug on Reggie's website. From there, you can access them all. He does one a week. And there's all, you know, there might be a part 1, part 2, but there's always a different theme. And everything is informational. It's not opinionated. It's based on statistics. And I mean, I guess some of it's opinionated because it's a blog, but it's an educated opinion. It's not based on speculation of the things that you're talking about. It's based on past, you know, whether it's this is what's happened in the past or this is what our industry has become. And I've thoroughly enjoyed reading them.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I try and you know, just I try and not put anything out that I haven't given some thought to, or that there's not some basis. It's not just, you know, me randomly saying, I think this is going to be a huge book. It's if I do recommend a comic like Sandman a lot, because it's what I know the most about. It's like, well, hey, it's the first appearance. It's probably going to be a bad guy in season 2 or 3. It's an important character, and it's not in Key Collector yet. So you can literally go out and find it in a dollar bin, or for under $5, you know, might as well pick it up. Oh, and I wanted to mention, Roger, someone in the chat, I think, had the actual, I think the Adam the Blue Marvel sales data was 17,500 copies, where the Clash of Kings comic that I blogged about had like an estimate of like 2,000 to 2,800. So a very, very low print run. And it also happened to have a 1 in 10, 1 in 20, and 1 in 25 ratio variant. So you do the math on that, you might have like 75 copies of a book up to like 200 copies. So, but it's, if you know that sort of stuff, then if there's a comic that you think is interesting or has a good first appearance, and you can figure out, hey, this is a really, really low supply book, like, don't wait until there's a casting announcement and it's in Key Collector. Like, go out and find the book now when it's cheap.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, even in your blogs where you may speculate, it's based on reasoning. You give a reason behind it. Here, this is going to become a live action. These are characters that are going to be brand new, and like you said, they're not on Key Collector yet. Nobody's really knows about them, and you can still find them in $5 boxes. You know, and you know, like I said, everyone always says this is why we hang out with people smarter than us. You know, if you pay attention to people and read blogs of people that are intelligent and educated, you're gonna learn stuff. And I thoroughly learned things. And I'm gonna tell you, this next thing that I'm gonna bring up that I learned from, I am so effing doing. When I read this, I'm like, this is genius. And I'm not gonna make the same mistakes you made. I am absolutely gonna do this. It's called Bigger and Better. As your follow-up, you're like, I screwed this all up. I bought, you know, 3 books with this. So if anybody doesn't know what this is, he does a blog. I love this idea. I absolutely love this. I wish I had, you know, learned about this when we were like in when we just went to New Hampshire, like to swap, because I probably would have been on round 3 by now. But so you go anywhere, you buy a book for $1. You find a book, you know, that's you know, worth more than $1. You find $1. You take that book and you get it for a bigger, better book. Then you take the money you make off of that and you buy a bigger, better book. And then you just keep going and going until you get Hulk 181. I think that was what you were comparing. It was like, how do you get a Hulk 181? I mean, this is a quick synopsis here that I took from the blog. But if you read the blog, he even goes into the whole, all right, well, if you grade something and then sell it, make sure you deduct that money so you get an actual accurate account of, this is what I sold it for, this is what I made, then I bought the next book for this. If you slab it, when you sell it, you got to remove that from your profit margin so that you can keep accurate count of it. This is genius, man. I cannot wait to do this. This is is this something that you came up with on your own? Are you still doing this as far as the blog was concerned? Are you still in the process of your Bigger and Better?
I am, but as you know from the second part, I screwed it up because part of my collecting that I really enjoy is like bargain hunting, like dollar bin digging. And the problem I ran into was I kept like, okay, I got $20 now out of that $1. And instead of buying 1 book for $20, I'd find like 5 for, you know, so.
Yeah, we talked about earlier before Erod got on that he did something similar in his shows where he sees Road to a Key.
Yeah.
But I think he did a little bit different than the way you explained it, or maybe he didn't. I just didn't understand how he was doing it.
Well, the 2 things. One, I actually got the idea when I was in high school. It was like kind of a scavenger hunt game. And the story I heard, I have no idea if it's true or not. You know, it could be an urban legend. but a group did like a scavenger hunt with their friends, and everybody got a penny and had to like go out and, you know, ask people if they would trade them something bigger and better for a penny. So you go to your neighbor's house, they give you like a hammer or something for a penny, and then you keep trading. And the story that I heard that a friend swore was true was they did this scavenger hunt and somebody came back with an old beater car. So I was like, whoa, that's pretty fun. And I'm like, this could make a fun game for comic collectors. But I'll be honest, even though I wrote that because I just thought it was fun and interesting, it might be something cool for people to try. The thing that really made me interested in writing about that is this can be a really expensive hobby now. And, you know, I was anchored when I collected as a kid. I don't know what a Hulk 181 went for as pre-CGC, but it probably wasn't more than $500 and super high grade. It might have been half that. And it's gotten so costly that I feel like, you know, we need to do things that get younger people and people who don't have the same resources interested in collecting. And this was a way to say, hey, look, you could literally have $1. And if you do it smart and you think about it and you spend some time looking, you can end up with a fun way of collecting and building up to a bigger book like Erod talked about in his Road to, you know, it's about
Road to a Key,
until you can get a bigger book. And I just felt like, well, it's a fun game, but it's also a way to encourage people. Like, you don't have to drop thousands of dollars to build a good collection. You can find ways to have fun and collect on a budget if you want to. So
yeah, you build equity. You know, we always say, you know, you might not want a, you know, 3.0 of a Hulk 181, but you buy that if it's affordable and it's a good price as equity to get to the 8.0, or if we're not as lucky as Otto to have a 9.2, you know, but it's equity, you know, but to track that, I think I'm going to do that, and I think I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to record every time. Hey, I spent $1 on this book. Next time I took that book, I sold it for $10. I bought this book just to show you until I get to the whatever my key is, whether it's a, you know, a First Punisher, or if it's a Hulk 181, or, you know, like, those are books I don't own. So maybe that's a good way for me to get there.
Well, I will certainly watch every one of those videos.
Yeah, I'm gonna have fun with this. When I read that, I'm like, this is awesome, and you know, it's just Road to a Key like Erod, but the way your blog explained it, you know, I could, you know, like I said, that's why we hang out with people more educated than us, smarter than us, and you know, you kind of made it, you know, in layman terms, this is how easy it is, and I loved it. So, guys, those are just a few of the blogs that I enjoyed that I scanned over. So if you're in the chat, you're watching a rewind, I highly recommend to go read Doug Bratton's blogs from the first one he did right up into the most recent one, because they're just informational, they're fun, they bring up, you know, information that I never, you know, it's like, man, I didn't even think of that, you know, like, and I love the way you write it, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you for that, Doug. Well,
I appreciate it, Roger. Very, very kind of you to promote that. And I'm sure Reggie appreciates it too, because, you know, I feel very fortunate that, you know, he's willing to, you know, give me a place on his site and kind of a little platform to throw out my ideas.
Yeah. And like I said, it's in the description of this video. You'll see a link to Doug's latest blog, and that'll, you know, from there you can access the rest of them. So all right, so moving on. So what's the first thing you ever collected as a kid? Did you collect anything? You know?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I started with baseball cards. Well, actually, my great grandmother collected coins, and when I was like, I don't know, 3 years old, I would sit with her, and she'd go out and get rolls of pennies, and we'd kind of search them for like a 1909 penny, you know, and
yeah.
and I think that kind of got me to have the collecting bug. And then my dad used to tell me stories about when his mom threw out all his baseball cards and his comic books, So I started collecting baseball cards probably when I was like 5 years old. And then my brother Dave got into comic books. And I remember going with him to, you know, the local whatever shop. It wasn't an LCS that had comics on a spinner rack. And I saw Teen Titans. I still have the book, Teen Titans Annual #1, George Perez painted cover. And I was blown away. And I always loved Robin, Batman and Robin, but Robin, my older brother was Batman. I was Robin, you know, when we go out for Halloween and stuff. So
Yeah.
I saw that book, and that was the first comic book that I ever bought. And,
how old were you then?
probably like, I don't know, maybe 8 years old. And I started collecting the Wolfman Perez New Teen Titans run. That sucked me in. And then I got really into G.I. Joe too. Those were my first 2 series that I started collecting.
So that's funny because that's how I got into going to my LCS was with my brother Dave, my big brother Dave. You talk about these Teen Titans? Look at that group, huh? Man, we are sexy.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
So that's me and Otto and our families.
Oh, wow.
At Terrificon, it's got to be 5 years ago.
That is awesome.
For those of you who can't tell, I'm Deathstroke and Otto is Cyborg. Of course, our wives holding up the Teen Towers, T's for the Teen Titans Tower. So as one of the things I always ask, you know, when people are posting on Instagram and doing blogs or trying to stay relevant with today's collecting. So is there anything in your collection that you don't normally share, like in your platform, because it's not necessarily relevant with today's collecting, but, you know, that you would like to share with, you know, here now, my channel?
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing is, from being a cartoonist and being in the National Cartoonist Society, I just, without intentionally collecting, I amassed a really cool collection of signed, and in many cases, signed sketch books by different comic creators that I, you know, just got to know personally. And I brought 2 out that I thought would be fun. I've got a bunch, so for another day.
Yeah.
The first one.
All right, hold on one second.
Oh.
Highlight this guy, man.
That is awesome. So the first one is Jerry Robinson, Ambassador of Comics. It was a biography written about Jerry Robinson, and for the non-comic historians, Jerry Robinson and Bill Finger were Bob Kane's 2 assistants in the early years of Batman. And they were really the Bill Finger was truly a co-creator of Batman and was not recognized as such till many, many years later after his death. And Jerry Robinson was the creator of the Joker and co-creator of Robin, I believe, with Bill Finger. And Jerry, I got to know through the National Cartoonist Society. And there was a biography about him, and that's Jerry. He passed away a few years ago, but he
you personalized it. That's awesome.
Signed this book for me, and Jerry was a really, really a good guy, truly, as the book title, and Ambassador of Comics. Very worthwhile reading about. But one day when I was with Jerry Robinson at a National Cartoonist Society function, he actually pulled out and showed me the first drawing he ever did of the Joker.
No way.
Yes. And he, like, I was sitting with him with that first picture, and I almost fell out of my chair and was like, you should probably put that in a safe.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Fold it up and put it in your wallet? I mean,
Yeah. So that was one I wanted to share. And I have one other one that I'll tell you the story first and then show you the book. I was at New York Comic Con, I forget which year, and a friend of mine, Charlie Kochman, also through the NCS, is a great editor and has been in comics for many years. And he was with Abrams at the time and still is, and he had a brand new cartoonist that was just releasing his first book. So I went to visit Charlie, and Charlie introduced me to the cartoonist, and I wanted to support Charlie, so I bought a copy of this guy's book, and he signed it and sketched it for me, or he signed it for me, and I asked him if he would mind sketching it, which in the kind of the newspaper humor cartoon world is a very normal thing. People will always sketch your book for you. I know in comic book artists, that's a lot more work, and that's how a lot of people make their living. But
yeah,
in the humor cartoon world, that's appropriate. And this artist, this was the book hadn't come out yet. It was his first signing ever. And he was like blown away. He had never had his work published in print. He'd only done web comics. And he said, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. No one's ever asked me to sketch a book before." So I said to him, I laughed, and I said, "Oh, you should put that in there. It will be worth money someday." And we both laughed, and he did it. A year later, I'm in a Barnes and Noble, and there's a giant display of this guy's work. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? And the artist was Jeff Kinney, who created Diary of a Wimpy Kid, who some of your kids might be familiar with.
Yes,
and I actually have notated by Jeff Kinney the first ever signed sketch drawing over here. And he wrote it on there, and there's now 250 million Diary of a Wimpy Kid books in print.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Let me get back here. Yeah, that's amazing. You pull that out, like for you to have a sketch from him like that, like you said, for him to be blown away that someone asked.
Yep.
And then to have it blow up like that, that's amazing.
Well, the funny thing is Charlie years later, because it's actually noted, which is the bizarre thing, that never happens. And it just happened on a lark because I, jokingly asked him to do it, and he did it. Charlie was like, "Hey, there's some collectors out there. Like, you could, if you ever wanted to sell it, you could probably like pay for a year of your kid's college with that book." And it's going to my son someday. I'm not selling it.
Yeah. It may go to his kid's college.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody's loving that story as much as I am, for sure. Yeah, I'm kidding. My kids were all over that. The movies came out, just made it just like superhero comics. When the movie comes out, everything explodes. Some people probably never knew what Diary of a Wimpy Kid was until the movie came out.
Oh yeah. Well, if they have young kids, especially like in that, first, second, third, fourth grade range, their kids have probably read it. So and it really is. If adults have never read it, I promise you that first book especially is outstanding. It will remind you of your childhood. When Jeff Kinney wrote this, he actually originally wrote it to be a graphic novel for adults about what life was like in middle school. And because it was originally published online and built up a huge following among kids, his editor, Charlie, very wisely was like, we should sell this to kids, not to adults. And obviously that was the right move. And Jeff Kinney is
brilliant for sure.
Quite well because of that decision. But it's really a good read, and I would recommend adults check it out sometime.
Yeah, that was definitely a brilliant decision.
Yeah.
So I know you had mentioned this earlier. So if people seen you on Reggie's, they've looked at your Instagram. What was something they don't know about you just by looking at your social media? They have something other than you're a cartoonist?
Yeah. Well, there was that. There's obviously what we already talked about. I'm a huge baseball lover, including the history of the game, sabermetrics, all of that. But obviously my favorite thing is watching my son and coaching. I love to volunteer coach. So that's something. And then something that you mentioned at the beginning of the show in my now professional life, I'm an executive director of a nonprofit in Hudson County, New Jersey, which is, I won't tell that story. That's not as interesting and would take too long to explain. But
on the way out, I'll have you quickly give a synopsis of the charity that you work for, because there is a link in the description for the charity. If somebody's watching this and it hits near and dear to their heart, then they can donate or something if they so choose. And as I said in the description, Doug's Instagram link is there. Make sure you follow him. His a link to his latest blog on Reggie Collect's website, which will give you all the blogs. I highly recommend you read them. And I don't know if there's a way to get notified when they come out on the website or not, but you do them once a week. And, there's part ones and part twos, but they're very entertaining and educational at the same time. And I've been enjoying them.
Thank you.
So you're going to have to come back on as a guest, because there's a ton of questions that I have that I want to respect your time and everybody else's on YouTube's and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go right to that part of the show, rapid fire with the Cranky Canadian. It's where I ask 15 questions. You can answer them rapidly. I don't mind if you embellish a little bit to explain why or whatever, but the idea is
that's hard for me to do.
The idea is it's the answer the first thing at the top of your head, but definitely going to have you back on as a guest, because there's so much more that we can cover. I want to hear some more of those stories, some more of those, those cool things that you've collected, like the Wimpy Kid book and stuff. So we'll call it Doug Bratton Part 2 the next time you're on.
I'm in.
So. All right, so we'll start the rapid fire. First few are very easy. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Let's go Dunkin'.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
DC or Marvel?
DC. Vertigo published Sandman.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Iron Man or Cap?
I came to Marvel late. I'm going to go with Iron Man.
All right. Vacation. Disney or a cottage on a lake?
Cottage on a lake. There's a story behind that, and this is why I get off topic, but I'll leave it alone.
If you could visit anywhere in the world with a snap of your fingers, where would you go?
I went to Australia when I was in college, and it's like being on another planet. I would love to go back to Australia.
Nice. Do you prefer reading a comic book or a novel?
I love comics, but probably a novel.
If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, real or fictional?
Number one, my grandfather, who passed away when I was 23. Man, I should be prepared for this, and I'm not.
Nobody ever is.
It would probably be 2 other close friends of mine who passed too young.
All right, those good answers. You can see them one more time.
Yep.
One piece of advice you would give 10-year-old you.
Oh, man. Buy Hulk 181.
Buy a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
Buy comics. Don't worry about it. Spending $100 on a comic book won't matter in 20 years, right? 30 years. So you have a long weekend. Do you spend it traveling or do you spend it relaxing in the backyard?
Depends how tired I am from work. I love road trips, and especially if I go see a baseball game. Probably traveling, but man, if I'm beat, there's nothing like having nothing on the calendar hanging out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. if someone and quick traveling, like I'm going, you say you like to go to ball games. I'm traveling in November with my son to go see Michigan play Ohio State in the Big House.
Oh,
I've
awesome.
never looked so forward to anything in my life, and it's months away.
Enjoy it. Roger, I went to Auburn University, big football school, and got to go to, the Iron Bowl and many, many huge college football games. As much as I love baseball, there is nothing like a rivalry football game.
Yeah, this
so
should be
enjoy that.
Maybe because we're there, they'll win once.
Yeah. I'm not making that bet, but
yeah, no. If someone were to play you in the movie, who would it be?
Oh God. I don't know. I think when I was younger, the guy who played Chandler, I would occasionally hear that. I don't. Matthew Perry, I guess.
Matthew Perry, yeah. All right, that works. That works. Or Woody Harrelson.
I'll take that.
What would your last meal be?
Lobster. Love lobster.
Nice. That's a good one. If you could win an Olympic gold medal for any sport, real or fake, what would it be?
In high school, I fenced. So I'll say fencing because it would just, I was, I guess, decent for a high school fencer, but never pursued it after that. That would have been fun. Oh man, Uncanny Swag said roll tide. Boo.
I'm about to block you, man.
Yeah.
We're about to block you, my man. That's just, because we had somebody on here last week. My last show, someone was on here saying go Bruins, and I bounced their asses for 30 seconds.
There you go.
No swearing in the chat. All right, last one. If you could have any superpower.
Flight. It's boring, but man, that would be something.
I got asked that on was it either Johnny's or Unknown Comics, and I said the same thing, man. I want to fly.
Yeah. Be amazing.
That was 15, not so rapid. Like I said, Doug, you've been a great guest. This is, like I said, I got more stuff I want to ask you. We're going to have you back on, and Doug Bratton part 2, because I'm not satisfied with some of the stuff I didn't get to ask you. So I'm going to highlight you, and I'm going to ask you to tell everybody what it is you have coming up, where they can find you, and tell them a little bit about the charity you work for. So if anybody, sometimes some of that stuff hits home and someone wants to donate. Highlight this guy, man.
Thanks, Roger. My Instagram is Doug.Bratton, BRATTON .9, the number 9. ReggieCollects.com. Every Wednesday morning is when the new blog post comes out. So definitely check out. And by the way, he has great comics for sale at great prices too. So it's worth visiting for that. The nonprofit I work for is Partners in Prevention. We deal with mental health and substance misuse, and specifically a lot around youth in that area. It's certainly more needed now than ever after the pandemic. So you can check out pipnj.org is our website. And the last thing I'll just say is when Roger, when you asked me to be on the show, I was really honored, because not only have I been a fan of Three Men in a Basement for much longer than I appreciate so much what you do for the community. Not only for fans of comics with your comic swap, but also for those who, probably most of the people here are aware of this, but Roger spent a lot of time and his own personal money coordinating a fundraiser for the Polly Strong Foundation, which raises money for research for childhood cancer. And that just so impressed me. So, when you reached out to ask me if I would be a guest, I was so honored because of what you do in the comics community and obviously in your life. You're a good guy.
I appreciate that, man. It's very kind words from you. I do appreciate that. This has been a great interview. Like I said, Doug, like I said, I enjoy your blogs. I enjoy you on Reggie. Wish you started your own YouTube channel, but I understand. I of all people understand how much work goes into it. So it's tough biting the bullet and getting into unless you have that spare time. I know a lot of us had the luxury of using the pandemic to lean on. We were home a lot more to start our channels, which gave people a place to go watch comic related stuff, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been my pleasure being able to interact with people like you, great people in the community, and I said probably the smartest guy I've had on this channel yet, and my IQ is about 40 scores higher just for having you on today. So, everybody look out for Doug Bratton Part 2 to come when I can get him on here. He's a very busy guy, but I appreciate everybody in the chat. Just like I said before, all the links that Doug was talking about is in the description. So his Instagram link, his the charity he works for, the link to that charity, and the link to his latest blog, which will get you to Reggie Collect's website and all the blogs on there. And I highly recommend that you go read those. They're not very long. You're not reading a book or anything, and they all have different topics and very informational stuff coming from a obviously very educated person who writes them. So yeah, Gene knows. Go Habs go. I even changed my name. I don't know if anybody noticed that. We're gonna end this here. I'm gonna go watch some hockey. I hope everybody else is cheering for the Canadians. Hopefully we can sweep it and get some rest. And Doug, this has been great. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to meeting you in person, either at a swap or a crawl. So definitely get me that date.
Hell yeah. As soon as we make it, you'll definitely know, as well as everybody else. So everybody, on behalf of 3 Men in the Basement, behalf of Doug Bratton, on behalf of Everado, David the Cave, I am Roger Levesque, a.k.a. the Cranky Canadian. Go Habs go. Appreciate everybody. Have a great night. Peace. Good night, Canada.